The conference room lights burned overhead as Dean Rucker advanced to his final slide. My stomach twisted into knots. "And that's how I secured the Lindell account," he announced, his voice dripping with false pride. Applause erupted around the table. Camera flashes lit up his smug face. I stood frozen at the back of the room, clutching my water glass so tightly I thought it might shatter. My name had been completely erased from the presentation. Every slide that should have credited my 6 months of relentless work now bore his signature. The proposal I'd crafted during countless sleepless nights, the strategy I'd developed through hundreds of client calls, the relationship I'd painstakingly rebuilt, all of it stolen. He caught my eye and smirked. That look said everything. "Stay quiet. Know your place. Accept this." My throat burned with unshed tears. My heart hammered against my ribs. The betrayal hit me like a physical blow, stealing the air from my lungs. How could he do this? How could he stand there and claim my victory as his own? But I remained silent, my legs trembling beneath me, as the room celebrated a lie. My knees threatened to buckle as executives congratulated Dean. I forced myself to stand tall, to maintain my composure even as my world crumbled. 6 months of work. 6 months of late nights at the office when everyone else had gone home. 6 months of meticulous research, carefully crafted presentations, and strategic phone calls. All those times I'd stayed until midnight, perfecting every detail of the pitch. All those weekends I'd sacrificed to study Lindell's business model, their pain points, their hidden needs. The countless coffees I'd shared with their team, building trust brick by brick. Claimed by a man who'd barely participated. My vision blurred with angry tears I refused to shed. Not here. Not in front of them. Dean had always been arrogant, but this was theft. Pure and simple. He'd stolen my crown, my moment, my proof of worth. A single thought crystallized in my mind, sharp and clear. I couldn't let this slide. I wouldn't. But confronting him now would only make me look bitter, unprofessional, desperate. So I swallowed the rage burning in my chest and retreated toward the door, already planning my next move. "My name is Harper Winters," I whispered to myself as I walked back to my desk. My hands were still shaking. "I'm 32 years old, and I've spent the last 8 years climbing the ranks at Quantum Solutions, a mid-sized consulting firm in Seattle. I'm the strategist everyone underestimates, the quiet one in meetings, the woman who does the real work while others take the credit. But this time was different. This wasn't just another project. The Lindell account was worth $1.2 million annually. It was the biggest deal our firm had closed in 3 years. And it was mine. Every single piece of it belonged to me. Dean Rucker, my manager, had just stood in front of our CEO and the entire executive team and claimed he'd secured it. My achievement, my breakthrough, my ticket to the promotion I'd been chasing for 2 years. All erased in a 15-minute presentation. This was the moment everything changed. This was where my story truly began. Not with victory but with betrayal. And what Dean didn't know was that I'd learned patience from the best strategist in the business. My grandmother always said revenge was a dish best served cold. 6 months earlier, I'd received the Lindell assignment on a cold February morning. Dean had tossed the file onto my desk with his usual dismissive attitude. "This account's been dead for 3 years, he'd said, not bothering to look up from his phone. "Clients impossible. Burn through 4 account managers. Corporate wants us to make one last attempt before we formally drop them." I'd opened the file and found a mess. Lindell Manufacturing, a family-owned industrial parts company, had been neglected by Quantum Solutions for years. Promises broken. Deadlines missed. Trust destroyed. Their CEO, Marcus Lindell, had specifically requested no further contact from our firm. But I saw something others had missed. Potential. I started with research. Hours of it. I learned everything about Lindell Manufacturing. Their founding story. Their values. Their struggles in a changing market. Then I did something Dean would never have approved of. Called Marcus directly. "Mr. Lindell, my name is Harper Winters. I know you've had bad experiences with Quantum Solutions. I'd like 10 minutes to explain why this time will be different." He'd hesitated, then agreed. That first conversation lasted 90 minutes. I listened more than I spoke. Marcus Lindell wasn't an impossible client. He was a wounded one. Previous account managers had treated his family business like just another contract. They'd made promises they couldn't keep, sent junior staff to important meetings, and never bothered to understand what made Lindell Manufacturing special. "My father built this company with his bare hands," Marcus told me during that first call. His voice cracked slightly. 50 years of hard work. "I won't let consultants who don't care destroy what he built." I understood immediately. This wasn't about numbers or contracts. It was about respect, legacy, family pride. Over the next several weeks, I rebuilt the relationship piece by piece. I showed up to every meeting personally. I studied their industry until I could speak their language. I created proposals tailored specifically to their needs, not generic templates. I sent handwritten thank you notes after every conversation. Dean watched from his corner office, occasionally scoffing. "You're too soft, Winters," he'd said during one team meeting. "Clients need aggression, not hand-holding. You're wasting time." But I knew something he didn't. Trust isn't built through aggression. It's built through consistency, through showing up, through actually caring. And Marcus noticed. Slowly his walls came down. By April, Marcus was taking my calls immediately. By May, he'd agreed to a pilot project. By June, he was ready to discuss a full partnership. Each small victory felt monumental. I documented everything meticulously. Every call transcript, every email exchange, every proposal revision. I kept detailed notes in my private files, recording the progression of the relationship. Dean barely participated. He'd show up to maybe one in every 5 meetings, spending most of his time checking his phone. When he did contribute, his comments were generic and unhelpful. "Just close the deal, Winters," he'd say, as if it were that simple. But closing this deal required finesse. Marcus needed to trust us completely before committing. The final proposal took me 3 weeks to perfect. I worked late every night, refining every slide, every data point, every recommendation. I practiced my presentation until I could deliver it flawlessly. The pitch meeting in late July was scheduled for 10 in the morning. I arrived at Lindell's headquarters an hour early, triple-checking my materials. Dean showed up 15 minutes late, coffee in hand, looking annoyed at having to be there. The presentation lasted 2 hours. Marcus asked detailed questions. I answered every single one. At the end of the meeting, Marcus stood and extended his hand. "Harper, you've done something I didn't think was possible. You've restored my faith in Quantum Solutions. We're in." My heart soared. This was it. The moment I'd worked toward for 6 months. Dean jumped in immediately. "Excellent decision, Marcus. We knew our strategic approach would win you over." I bristled at the "we," but said nothing. Marcus smiled at me, not Dean. "Harper's approach won us over," he corrected gently. "Her dedication and understanding of our business made the difference." Dean's jaw tightened, but he recovered quickly. "Of course. Harper's been executing the strategy one developed." I opened my mouth to object, then closed it. "Not here. Not in front of the client." We shook hands all around and left. In the car, Dean turned to me. "Good work executing my vision," he said casually. "I'll handle the internal presentation to corporate." Something cold settled in my chest. "Dean, this was my account from the beginning." I shrugged. "You did the groundwork. I provided strategic oversight. That's how it works, Winters. You'll understand when you're in management." I understood perfectly. He planned to steal my work. And I had a decision to make. Back at the office, I sat at my desk and pulled out my notebook. Not my work notebook, my personal one. The one I'd been keeping since I first suspected Dean couldn't be trusted. I started writing. Not in anger but in cold calculation. Every interaction with Dean over the past 6 months. Every time he dismissed my ideas in meetings, only to present them as his own later. Every client success I'd achieved that he'd somehow claimed credit for. Every pattern of behavior that proved he was a thief. The Lindell account was just the latest theft. It was also the biggest. And that meant the stakes were higher. I couldn't confront him directly. He was my manager. He controlled my performance reviews, my promotion opportunities, my reputation within the firm. One wrong move and I'd be labeled difficult, emotional, not a team player. But I also couldn't let this stand. I'd worked too hard, sacrificed too much. This was my breakthrough, and he wasn't going to steal it. So I needed a plan. Not revenge. That was messy and emotional. I needed strategy. Cold, calculated, professional strategy. The kind that would expose Dean's lies without making me look vindictive. I smiled faintly as an idea began forming. Dean's greatest weakness was his arrogance. The corporate presentation was scheduled for 2 weeks after we'd closed the Lindell deal. Dean spent those weeks preparing his slides in secret. He didn't ask for my input, didn't request my files, didn't even tell me I'd be expected to attend. I found out through an assistant who'd been asked to reserve the conference room. That told me everything. He planned to present my work as his own, and he didn't want me involved enough to object. So I started my counter-strategy. First, I sent a casual email to Marcus. Just wanted to follow up on our conversation from last week about implementation timelines. Looking forward to our continued partnership. Marcus responded within an hour. Thanks for staying on top of this, Harper. You've been wonderful to work with. Looking forward to working with you moving forward. I saved that email. Then I reached out to other members of Marcus's team I'd built relationships with. Casual check-ins. Project updates. Maintaining the connections I'd spent months developing. Each response reinforced the same message. They saw me as their point of contact. Not Dean. Not Quantum Solutions generally. Me. Meanwhile, I quietly compiled my documentation. Call logs, email chains, meeting notes, proposal drafts with my name and timestamp. A complete paper trail proving I'd led this account from start to finish. The night before Dean's presentation, I barely slept. Anger and anxiety warred in my chest. Part of me wanted to storm into the CEO's office and expose Dean immediately. But I knew better. Emotional outbursts would only damage my credibility. I needed to be smart about this. Calculated. Strategic. So I lay in bed, staring at my ceiling, and went through every possible scenario. If I confronted Dean publicly at the presentation, he'd dismiss me as bitter. If I went to HR, it would become a he said she said situation with no clear resolution. If I complained to our CEO directly, I'd look like I couldn't handle chain of command. Every direct approach had pitfalls. I needed something subtler. Something that would let the truth emerge naturally without me having to force it. That's when I remembered what my grandmother used to say. Harper, the best victories are the ones where your enemies defeat themselves. You just have to be patient enough to watch it happen. Dean's arrogance would be his downfall. He'd stolen my work, but he didn't actually understand it. He hadn't built the relationships. Hadn't done the research. Didn't know the details. All I had to do was maintain my connections with Lindell and let Dean's ignorance expose itself. Patience. Strategy. Precision. Those would be my weapons. The morning of the presentation arrived. I dressed carefully in my best suit, styled my hair, and walked into the office with my head high. Dean was already in the conference room, setting up his slides. I glimpsed my proposal on the screen, reformatted with his name in the header. My stomach churned, but I kept my expression neutral. The room filled quickly. Our CEO, Helena Cross, sat at the head of the table. The entire executive team flanked her. Dean started his presentation with confidence bordering on arrogance. And then I heard him say it. And that's how I secured the Lindell account. Not we. Not the team. He took sole credit. Described strategy he'd never developed. Claimed relationship building he'd never done. Even told stories about conversations he'd never had. I watched him lie with practiced ease, and something hardened inside me. Helena asked questions. How did you overcome their resistance to working with Quantum again? Dean answered smoothly, but his response was vague. Generic. I focused on relationship building and understanding their core needs. He had no specific details. No anecdotes. No proof. I noticed Helena's slight frown. She was sharp. She'd built this company from nothing. She could smell bullshit. But she said nothing. The presentation ended to polite applause. After the meeting, Helena approached Dean. Impressive work. I'd like to meet with Marcus Lindell personally to strengthen the relationship. Can you arrange a dinner? Dean paled slightly. Of course. I'll reach out to him. I suppressed a smile. Dean didn't have Marcus's personal number. Didn't have that kind of relationship. He'd have to go through official channels, which would look odd. But I said nothing. Just returned to my desk and waited. 3 days later, Dean appeared at my cubicle, looking frustrated. Winters, I need you to set up a dinner with Marcus Lindell and Helena. ASAP. Why me? I asked innocently. You're his contact, aren't you? You've been working with him. He looked uncomfortable. Just make it happen. I sent the email to Marcus, being careful with my wording. Marcus responded enthusiastically. I'd be delighted to meet Helena. Let's schedule it for next Thursday. Looking forward to seeing you there too, Harper. That last line was key. Marcus expected me at the dinner. Dean would have to include me now. The dinner was set for Morton's Steakhouse. I arrived early as always. Helena was already there, reviewing notes. Dean showed up exactly on time, clearly nervous. Marcus arrived last, shaking my hand warmly. Harper. Great to see you again. The dinner started pleasantly. Helena asked Marcus about Lindell Manufacturing's history. Marcus launched into stories about his father, the company's founding, their evolution. Dean tried to interject with generic comments, but Marcus kept directing his answers to me. Harper understands our business better than anyone, Marcus said at one point. She spent hours learning about our industry, our challenges, our values. That's why we felt comfortable moving forward. Helena's eyes flicked to me with interest. That's high praise. Marcus nodded enthusiastically. She's exceptional. The first person from Quantum who actually listened. Who showed up consistently. Who delivered on every promise. Dean shifted uncomfortably. Well, Harper executed the overall strategy we developed as a team. Marcus frowned slightly. Actually, Harper developed the strategy. She presented it to me personally. Multiple revisions based on our feedback. I watched Dean's face redden. Helena watched him too, her expression unreadable. The conversation continued, and with each passing minute, it became clearer to Helena that I'd been the driving force behind the Lindell account. Not Dean. Marcus mentioned specific conversations he'd had with me. Specific insights I'd provided. Specific ways I'd addressed their concerns. Dean couldn't contribute meaningfully because he hadn't been there. He didn't know the details. The dinner ended cordially, but I caught Helena's thoughtful look as we parted ways. The next morning, I received an email from Helena's assistant. Helena would like to meet with you tomorrow at 9. Please bring all documentation related to the Lindell account. My heart raced. This was it. I spent the entire day organizing my files. Every email, every call log, every proposal draft, every piece of evidence that proved I'd led this account from beginning to end. I arranged it chronologically in a clean binder, with a table of contents and section dividers. Professional, thorough, undeniable. That evening, Dean cornered me in the hallway. What did you say to Marcus at dinner? He was trying to sound casual but couldn't hide his anger. I didn't say anything. Marcus was just sharing his experience. He made it sound like you did everything. I did do everything, Dean. You know that. His eyes narrowed. Be careful, Winters. You don't want to make enemies in management. I held his gaze. I don't want to make enemies anywhere. I just want credit for my work. He walked away, but the threat lingered. The next morning, I arrived at Helena's office precisely at 9. She gestured for me to sit. Walk me through the Lindell account from the beginning. For the next hour I did exactly that. I showed her my initial research. The call logs proving I'd initiated contact. The email chains showing my relationship development. The proposal drafts with my name and timestamp. Helena listened without interrupting, taking notes occasionally. When I finished, she leaned back in her chair. This is comprehensive documentation. I keep detailed records of all my client work, I said simply. Good practice. She tapped her pen against her notepad. Help me understand something. Dean presented this account as his achievement. But based on what you're showing me and what I observed at dinner, you appear to be the primary relationship owner. I chose my words carefully. Dean is my manager. He provided oversight on the account. But yes, I led the day-to-day relationship building, strategy development, and execution. Why didn't Dean mention your role in his presentation? Pause. This was delicate territory. You'd have to ask him that. Helena smiled slightly. Diplomatic answer. She stood and extended her hand. Thank you for your time, Harper. This has been enlightening. I left her office unsure what would happen next. But I'd presented the truth. Now it was up to Helena. 2 days later, Helena called an all-hands meeting. Dean looked nervous. I remained calm. Helena stood at the front of the room and addressed the team. I want to recognize exceptional client work. The Lindell account represents the kind of relationship building and strategic thinking we value at Quantum Solutions. I pause. Harper Winters led this account from initial contact through close. Her dedication and expertise secured this partnership. The room fell silent. All eyes turned to me. I felt my face flush. Dean's expression was stone. Helena continued. Moving forward, Harper will be promoted to senior account strategist and will continue managing the Lindell relationship directly. Applause erupted, but it felt different from the applause Dean had received. This felt genuine, earned. After the meeting, colleagues congratulated me. Some looked uncomfortable, clearly aware of the unspoken tension with Dean. Dean himself disappeared immediately. I returned to my desk, emotions swirling. Relief, vindication, satisfaction, but also sadness that it had come to this. That evening I received an email from Dean requesting a meeting. We met in a small conference room. He looked deflated. That was unnecessary, he said. Going around me to Helena. I didn't go around you. Helena requested the meeting. You could have declined. Why would I decline an opportunity to present my work to our CEO? He had no answer for that. The truth was stark between us. He'd stolen my achievement and I'd reclaimed it. Not through confrontation or drama, but through documentation and truth. This will impact your career here, he said, attempting one last threat. I smiled sadly. No, Dean. It won't. Because I have every conversation, every email, every piece of evidence. The truth is on my side. Dean left the meeting without another word. I knew our working relationship was effectively over. But I'd made peace with that. Over the next several weeks, the dynamics at Quantum Solutions shifted. Colleagues who'd previously dismissed me started taking me seriously. Junior staff members asked for my mentorship. Clients requested me specifically. Dean, meanwhile, grew increasingly isolated. His bluster and false confidence had been exposed. People began questioning his other achievements, wondering what else he might have claimed unfairly. I heard through office gossip that Helena had initiated a review of his client accounts. Quietly, professionally, she was verifying his claims. 3 months after my promotion, Dean announced he was leaving Quantum Solutions for a new opportunity. No farewell party. No fond goodbye emails. Just a quiet exit that spoke volumes. I felt no triumph at his departure. Just relief that I could finally work without constantly protecting my achievements. Marcus Lindell sent me a handwritten note when he heard about my promotion. "Congratulations, Harper. Well deserved. Looking forward to continued partnership." That note meant more to me than any corporate recognition. It represented what I valued most: genuine relationships built on trust and mutual respect. Not stolen credit or hollow achievements. Real work, real results, real integrity. My grandmother called the day Dean left. Somehow, she always knew when important things happened in my life. "I heard your manager left," she said without preamble. "How do you feel?" Thought about it. Relieved. Sad it came to this. But mostly relieved. "You did the right thing," she assured me. "Standing up for yourself without tearing others down. That takes strength." "He made it easy," I admitted. "He lied so much he couldn't keep his story straight." She laughed. "Liars always trip over their own tails. You just had to be patient enough to watch it happen." That patience had been the hardest part. Every day of watching Dean claim credit. Every meeting where he presented my work as his own. Every moment of swallowing my anger and maintaining professionalism. But it had been worth it. Because when the truth finally emerged, it emerged cleanly, undeniably, without me looking vindictive or emotional. I'd simply presented facts and let them speak for themselves. "What's next for you?" my grandmother asked. "More of the same," I said. "Building relationships, doing good work, making sure it's recognized properly. That's my girl." After we hung up, I sat in my new office, a real office with walls and a door, and reflected on the past year. The promotion had come with significant changes. My salary increased by 40%. My responsibility expanded to oversee a small team. Most importantly, I now had direct access to Helena and the executive team. No more filtering through Dean or worrying about managers stealing credit. But the real victory was quieter. It was in the way colleagues now approached me with respect. In the way clients trusted me. In the way I could walk into meetings with confidence, knowing my work would be recognized. I hired 2 junior strategists to help with the growing client load. I made a point of crediting their work explicitly. In every presentation, every email, every conversation. I remembered how it felt to be invisible, and I refused to let others experience that. Marcus Lindell's account continued growing. His trust in me deepened. He referred 2 other clients to Quantum Solutions, specifically requesting me as their strategist. Each new success felt earned. Clean. 6 months after Dean's departure, Helena asked me to speak at our annual company meeting. The topic: building client relationships that last. I prepared carefully, wanting to share real insights. Not generic platitudes but actual strategies that had worked. The day of the presentation, I stood in front of 200 Quantum employees. My hands were steady. My voice was clear. And as I shared the story of rebuilding the Lindell relationship, I felt proud. During the Q&A after my presentation, a junior employee raised her hand. "How do you handle situations where you're not getting proper credit for your work?" The room grew quiet. Everyone knew she was referring to what had happened with Dean, even though I'd carefully avoided mentioning him in my presentation. I considered my answer carefully. Document everything. Keep detailed records of your contributions. Build direct relationships with clients and colleagues so your value is visible. And be patient. The truth has a way of emerging if you give it time. Another hand went up. "But what if your manager is actively taking credit?" I held the employee's gaze. "Then you have a choice. You can confront it directly, which sometimes works. Or you can continue doing excellent work while quietly ensuring the right people know what you're contributing. Both approaches have merit. It depends on your specific situation." Helena, sitting in the front row, nodded approvingly. After the presentation, several employees approached me privately. They shared their own stories of stolen credit, workplace injustice, feeling invisible. I listened to each one, offering what advice I could. That evening I realized something important. My experience with Dean hadn't just been about one stolen account. It had positioned me to help others facing similar situations. To be the mentor I'd needed during those dark months. A year after the Lindell account closed, Marcus invited me to Lindell Manufacturing's annual leadership retreat. "We want you to speak to our management team about strategic partnerships," he explained. "You've been instrumental in our growth this year." I accepted, honored by the invitation. The retreat was held at a resort in the mountains. 2 days of presentations, networking, and strategic planning. I spoke on the second day about building trust-based business relationships, about showing up consistently, about understanding your partner's real needs, not just surface-level requirements. After my presentation, Marcus pulled me aside. "I want to tell you something," he said. "When Dean presented that account to your CEO, claiming credit for the work, I was furious." My eyes widened. I hadn't known Marcus had found out about that. "How did you know?" "Helena called me directly, asked pointed questions about who I'd actually worked with. I told her the truth. That you'd done everything." He smiled. "She told me later that my confirmation had been crucial in her investigation." I felt a wave of gratitude toward both Marcus and Helena. The truth had emerged not just because of my documentation, but because the client relationships I'd built were genuine. People who truly knew your work would vouch for you. You couldn't fake that kind of credibility. 2 years after Dean's departure, I was promoted again. This time to Director of Client Strategy. My team had grown to 8 people. The Lindell account had expanded into a multi-year, multi-million-dollar partnership. I'd closed 6 other major accounts, each through the same approach. Patient relationship building, genuine interest, consistent follow-through. My reputation within Quantum Solutions had completely transformed. I was no longer the quiet strategist everyone underestimated. I was the leader they turned to for difficult accounts, complex negotiations, and strategic guidance. But I never forgot where I'd come from. The cubicle I'd worked in for years before my promotion. The nights I'd stayed late, perfecting proposals no one would see. The feeling of watching someone else claim my work. Those memories kept me humble, kept me focused on what mattered. Real work, real relationships, real integrity. I heard through the industry grapevine that Dean had struggled at his new company. His pattern of claiming others' work had eventually caught up with him there too. He'd been let go after 6 months. I felt no satisfaction in his failure. Just a sad recognition that people who steal credit ultimately destroy themselves. They can't sustain success built on lies. At my promotion celebration, Helena pulled me aside. "You know what I respect most about how you handled the situation with Dean?" "What's that?" "Yes. You never made it personal. Never got emotional. Never tried to destroy him. You just consistently presented the truth and let it speak for itself." Helena smiled. "That's real leadership, Harper. Not just managing up or making yourself look good. Actually doing the work and trusting that it'll be recognized." Her words meant everything. Because that had been my goal from the beginning. Not revenge. Not destruction. Just truth. Just recognition for work genuinely done. There were moments I wanted to confront him publicly, I admitted. Moments I was so angry I could barely breathe. But you didn't. You waited. You documented. You built relationships that would vouch for you. That takes discipline most people don't have. I thought about all the nights I'd lain awake, angry and hurt. All the times I'd drafted confrontational emails I never sent. All the moments I'd had to swallow my pride and play the long game. Had been worth it. Because when the truth emerged, it emerged cleanly. Completely. Undeniably. No one could dismiss it as vindictiveness or exaggeration. The facts spoke for themselves. 3 months later, Dean reached out via LinkedIn. His message was brief. "I owe you an apology. What I did was wrong. I've learned a lot since then. Wishing you continued success." I stared at his message for a long time. Part of me wanted to ignore it. To let his apology sit unacknowledged. But that wasn't who I was. I replied simply, "Thank you for reaching out. I wish you well." No long explanation. No acceptance or rejection of his apology. Just acknowledgement and moving forward. Because holding on to anger would only hurt me. Dean had faced consequences for his actions. He'd lost his job, damaged his reputation, and hopefully learned important lessons. That was enough. My energy was better spent on the work I loved. On the team I was building. On the clients who trusted me. On the career I'd fought so hard to protect and advance. That evening, I sat in my office after everyone else had gone home. The city lights twinkled outside my window. I pulled out my old notebook, the one where I documented everything during those difficult months with Dean. I flipped through the pages, reading my notes from 2 years ago. The anger, the frustration, the careful planning. Then I closed it and put it in a drawer. That chapter was over. I'd won not through aggression or confrontation, but through patience and integrity. Through doing the work and trusting that truth would prevail. My grandmother had been right all along. The best victories were the ones where your enemies defeated themselves. Now, sitting in my corner office with director on my title and a team of talented strategists looking to me for guidance, I understood something important. The real victory hadn't been Dean's departure. It hadn't been my promotion or salary increase. The real victory was simpler. I'd maintained my integrity throughout. I'd refused to become bitter or vindictive. I'd done the right thing even when it was hard. Even when it would have been easier to lash out or give up. The Lindell account that started everything had grown beyond anything I'd imagined. Marcus and I had become genuine friends. His company had doubled its business with Quantum Solutions. And every success felt earned. Clean. I'd learned that recognition wasn't something you could demand or steal. It was something you earned through consistent excellence, genuine relationships, and unwavering integrity. Dean had tried to shortcut that process by stealing credit. But shortcuts never last. Only real work endures. My phone buzzed with a text from Marcus. "Just closed our biggest quarter ever. Thank you for believing in us from the beginning." I smiled and typed back. "Thank you for taking a chance on me." Because that's what it had been. Chance. Risk. A bet on building something real instead of settling for surface-level relationships. And it had paid off in ways I never expected.